Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 3 Humanities History Topics. If you'd like to get a piece of paper and a pencil and practice taking Cornell notes during the slideshow, you're welcome to do that. But let's get started. So our first topic this week is the division of the Roman Empire into East and West. There were many reasons, as we've talked about in the past couple of weeks, why the Western Roman Empire fell. But one of them had to do with the barbarian tribes that were in the vicinity. So they had different goals in the Roman Empire: to join, to raid, or to bring down the Roman Empire. So that contributed to the fall of Rome. Also, Rome was really large. The empire was enormous and difficult to rule effectively, and so Diocletian, who was the emperor from 284 to 305, decided to divide Rome into 4 regions, and each of those regions was ruled by a separate emperor. So that meant that during this time, it was a period where there wasn't a lot of unity and there was not a lot of travel between the different regions, and it contributed to some things that were negative. But one of the things that came out of this was that different languages based on Latin also arose. For example, Spanish, Italian, and French, which are all languages that are based on Latin, which was spoken by the Romans, but they evolved differently in different areas. So this government that Diocletian installed was called a tetrarchy, which meant that each part of Rome was ruled over by co-emperors. Eventually, he had to abdicate the throne, which means he stopped being the emperor due to illness in 305 CE. And then the emperor that made the next decision to split Rome was Constantine. So Constantine is the emperor who ended up moving the capital of Rome from the west to the east. So he changed the capital of Rome from the city of Rome to the city of Constantinople in the east. And he did that so that the eastern part could grow stronger, because he knew that the western part was weaker and he wanted to divide the two, so that the east could thrive even if the west didn't. And here we can see some maps of what happened when Diocletian divided the Roman Empire. He divided it into east and west, and then there were 2 emperors in each part. And then Constantine also divided it into east and west, but there was only one ruler for each part. All right, our second topic is Constantinople, and specifically Constantinople as it was ruled by Constantine, the emperors Constantine and Justinian. So Constantinople was the capital of Byzantium, which was the Eastern Roman Empire, which lasted 1,000 years, over 1,000 years. Constantine was a powerful general who ruled over Rome as emperor. And this city of Constantinople was originally named Byzantium. And in fact, Constantinople has had many, many different names, and now even has a different name, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But he was known as the first emperor to accept Christianity. He saw a flaming cross in the sky. This was a sign to him, and that he was going to be successful in battle. And so he saw a cross with the words underneath of it that said "In hoc signo vinces," which means in this sign you'll conquer. And so that led him, and then he won the battle, and that led him to believe in Christianity. And he and cults in the Roman Empire. So he was an advocate for religious tolerance during this time. Constantinople became the largest and wealthiest city in Europe during the 4th through 13th centuries because it was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, and everybody went. Whereas before all roads led to Rome, now a lot of that switched over to the city of Constantinople, and Constantinople instead became the center of culture and education for this area. Constantine had several building projects that he did in the city of Constantinople. One of them was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which you can see on the left, and then Old St. Peter's Basilica, which is on the right. And these were churches that were the beginnings of a lot of the churches that we'll see later on during the Middle Ages and beyond. So these buildings were the first inspiration for those later buildings. Some important elements of Byzantine culture were chariot races. It appreciated mosaics in their artworks, which is little tiny pieces of tile that they put together to create design, like you can see here. Monks, icons, and religious buildings were all things that were related to Christianity and celebrating the religion that Constantine had chosen. Another interesting thing is that during this time, they created what is probably the first flamethrower by using science that they had discovered, chemistry, which is what we're studying this year. So they combined certain elements to create fire. They think that the elements were probably naphtha and quicklime, which would be ignited when it came into contact with water. So they would use it on enemy ships, and they called it Greek fire. Justinian was the last great emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. He married a woman named Theodora, and they ruled together for 38 years. He was able to regain a lot of the land that had been taken by the barbarian tribes. And he also is well known for putting together a law code for taking all of the different laws that had been put into place and compiling them, putting them all together into the Justinian Code. And that's important because that code has gone on to influence a lot of cultures that came afterward, including our own. So some of our laws are actually influenced by Justinian's law code. So one thing that you can see from this picture from before is that the Emperor Constantine is presenting the city of Constantinople to Mary, or the Christ child, which we'll look at this again in a few minutes when we look at the Hagia Sophia. But that was a church that he had built, and this church was important because it was considered a masterpiece of architecture. It was built early, but then there was a great big fire, and so it was destroyed. And so Justinian then had the Hagia Sophia rebuilt. That was one thing that he did, and he had other building projects done as well. And let's see. Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute when we talk about the Hagia Sophia specifically. But some other interesting Byzantine Christians that are known are considered to be some of the first saints in the Catholic Church. For example, St. Nicholas is now known as Santa Claus, but he was originally a Christian in the Byzantine world. Some other issues that Constantinople dealt with was that Persia specifically made trade difficult and blocked some of their efforts to trade with other areas such as China. But despite this, there was some trade. For example, Justinian had monks bring silkworms from China to create silk. Monks were a profession that a job that people would have during this time. They would basically kind of live in the churches, and where they would have a room or a cell, not a prison cell, but like a one room that they would live in. They'd have food, they'd have clothes, and they'd be educated, and they would spend their time copying manuscripts and painting icons, which icons were considered to be like religious symbols, symbols of things that had meaning for the Christian faith. If you would like to watch a video about this era, there's a really good one that I'll add to our our YouTube playlist for this week. And one last note about Constantinople is that it has had a lot of names over the last 2,000 years. It's had the name of Lagos, Byzantium, Augusta Antonina, New Rome, Constantinople, Byzantium again, Istanbul. It's had many, many, many names over the course of history, and that is because of several different reasons. Leaders wanted the city to be named after them. For example, Constantine wanted it to be named Constantinople. Trade came through there a lot, so different influences might affect which name it was called at that point. It was in a really good location. If you look back at the map, Constantinople is right here, where it's next to the sea, where ships could get to it easily. It's next to land, so it can get to all these different areas really quickly and easily. And so it was a really important a really important area for trade. And because renaming things is fun, so people like that. All right, our last topic is the Hagia Sophia, which is a church that was built originally by Constantine, but then rebuilt by Justinian. And it has a very interesting history that has changed a lot over time. So the word Sophia is Greek for wisdom. So Hagia Sophia in Greek means shrine of the holy wisdom of God. It is a really amazing building. Its dome has a diameter of 100 feet. It's a little bit smaller than the Pantheon Dome in Rome, which you guys saw last year. It has a decorated interior that is very, very well known, that includes mosaics, marble pillars, coverings. It's so richly and artistically decorated that Justinian is believed to have said, "Solomon, I have surpassed you." So Solomon was supposed to be a very, very rich man that had done lots of building. So Justinian said that he had surpassed Solomon. Here's a mosaic of Constantine at the Hagia Sophia, which we saw earlier, which represents him giving that to the city. Here's a mosaic of Justinian at the Hagia Sophia when he rebuilt it and gave it back to the city. And here's a view of the interior of the Hagia Sophia. This church was the largest church in the world for hundreds of years. It has marble columns all throughout the inside of the building, and it was originally decorated with colored marble, gold, silver, beautiful mosaics, but a lot of the original decoration has not survived. It did survive an earthquake in 558. It was believed to be looted by the Crusaders in 1204. But finally, after the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople in 1453, the cathedral, the church, was changed into a mosque, which it still is a mosque today. And at that time, they added, let's see if we can find a picture of what they added. They added these minarets here, and those were built all around on the four corners of the mosque, And also these golden discs that you see here were added to the interior. And in 1935, the building changed again, and at this point, it is now a museum. There is some controversy, however, because of the fact that this church, this mosque, has Christian elements and it has Islamic elements. And so there has been some difficulty because of the different kinds of decorations and ornaments that are used in the building. So here's a mosaic of Christ Pantocrator, which was one of the first images of Christ that was developed in the early Christian church. And this mosaic was covered over in 1453 when Constantinople was conquered by the Ottoman Turks, and it's been partially restored since then. But the issue is that the bottom part, or rather, I'm sorry, parts of this have been covered over by Islamic artwork. And so in order for all of the Christian elements to be shown, some of the Islamic artwork would have to be destroyed, and that's a difficulty. So restorers have tried to kind of balance in between the Christian culture and the Islamic culture and be respectful of both. Another issue is that parts of the artwork have been stolen by people who wanted to take home a piece of the mosaic. And so now those have been blocked off so that people can't take these historical pieces that have a lot of value for us to know about the history of the building. So what do you think? Do you think that restorers should uncover the historical artwork for Christianity or keep the historical artwork for Islam? Do you have an opinion? If you guys were here last year, you'll remember Mrs. Earlywine and Mr. Earlywine. They actually visited the Hagia Sophia a couple of years ago on a trip, and they got to see the building and what it looked like in person. So here's a view of it from the outside, and you can see the minarets and the dome. And then inside, they have scaffolding because they're constantly repairing the building, working on the building, restoring the artwork. So here you can see there's more scaffolding. There's some lighting so that they can see better. And it's cold in here. They definitely don't keep this huge building heated. So everybody needed to wear their coats. All right, those are our topics for this week. I hope you enjoyed that. And we will see you on week 4.